Our next scheduled speaker, Katherine Culbert, is here with us. She was born in Herkimer, New York, and I've been close to there. I haven't actually been there. And keeping with our education theme, she was the daughter of 2 teachers. And she earned a bachelor's degree from State University of New York. Which campus?
The College of Environmental Science and Forestry.
Forestry. Well, my wife graduated from SUNY Binghamton. So anyway, and she got a graduate degree from Northwestern University. And Katherine has been involved in a whole bunch of professional societies, volunteering with the League of Women Voters, various climate action groups. So she's a real busy activist type person. Katherine is running against incumbent Christy Craddock for a seat on the Railroad Commission. Now, we're all smart voters, right? So we know that the Railroad Commission doesn't regulate railroads much, but it does regulate one of the largest oil and gas and energy industries in the entire world. So it's a pretty important job. Katherine actually is a chemical engineer, and she currently works for an energy company in process safety engineering. Now, I don't know a whole lot about that field, but what it basically means is she works to ensure that the workers stay safe, and also to ensure that the hazardous chemicals stay in the pipelines and stay in the tanks and don't get released into the environment. So the work she does benefits the companies that she works for, because it keeps them from, getting sued for releasing toxic chemicals, that sort of thing. It benefits the workers, and it benefits all of us who would be exposed to all that stuff if it got out in the environment. So Katherine's also a small business owner. She has a consulting company that specializes in safety and compliance kinds of things for the industry. And guess what? If she's elected, she'll be the only railroad commissioner with any kind of energy industry experience. Imagine that. And she's running on a platform of environmental protection, corporate accountability, and transparency, which I'm sure you're going to tell us more about. So please join me in welcoming our next railroad commissioner, Katherine Culbert.
Wow, that was pretty much my whole speech. Yes, so as noted, my name is Katherine Culbert. I am the Democratic nominee for the Texas Railroad Commission. And like mentioned, I am a chemical engineer working in process safety, making sure everything stays where it's supposed to be inside the pipe, so that we are not injuring our workers, injuring our communities, and injuring the environment, which I know education in the environment is the big thing here today. So I want to talk about climate change a little. So climate change is not Santa Claus. Climate change is not something that you believe in or you don't believe in. Climate change is science, right? It's happening. If you talk to any climate scientist, it's happening. And it's being exacerbated by human activities, and specifically what the oil and gas industry is doing. So, right now, the 3 commissioners on the Railroad Commission are all climate deniers. None of them want to take any responsibility for what's happening to our climate. And I know you guys all, I'm sure, were affected by Winter Storm Uri. Yes? Guess what? Climate change. I live in the Houston area, and we've already had Hurricane Beryl this year. That was the earliest Category 4 hurricane in the Gulf since we've been recording hurricanes. Guess what? Climate change, right? All of these things are adding to it. The fact that it's September, whatever day it is, 19th, 20th, and 21st, and it's how hot out, right? Climate change. This is what we're being affected by with the oil and gas industry, and our railroad commissioners are trying to do everything impossible, it seems, to push that on us even more. Speaking of education, I'll throw this one out there. Wayne Christian, one of the other railroad commissioners, last year they were talking about the science curriculum for our science books in the state of Texas, and he wanted the State Board of Education to remove all references to climate change in our science books. Again, climate change is not Santa Claus. Climate change is science. Climate change, our students need to be learning about, and he's afraid that it's going to look bad for the oil and gas industry. Crazy. And I understand, right? Oil and gas is very important to this state, very important to our economy. You know, as mentioned, I work in the oil and gas industry. I understand how the industry works. I understand, the importance of the industry here in Texas. I also know that we can run more efficiently, more effectively, and protect our communities and protect our workers to a greater extent, while still having the oil and gas that we all know and love, right? We all love plastic. I admit, I drive on tires. Those are all made from oil and gas. So we need these things in our lives, but we need to do it better. So for instance, we'll look at climate change and what the Reilroad Commission is not doing. Out in West Texas, where a lot of the drilling is happening, a lot of the fracking, right? West Texas, South Texas. There are rules in place from the legislature that say how long a company is allowed to do venting and flaring when they're drilling a new well, right? Okay, great. And so what happens is companies will go and they'll drill these wells, and then they'll come in front of the Reilroad Commission and they'll say, well, we're having issues and we need to extend this and we need to vent or flare a little longer. There have been over 8,000 requests to the Reilroad Commission since 2021 for venting and flaring exceptions. They have denied 44 of them. So they are not looking at, what are the effects on the climate? What are the effects on the communities? What are the effects on the workers? They don't care. They're like, oh, well, it's cheaper that way, and that means I'm gonna make more money from my royalties or from my stock options. Great, yep, sure, go ahead, no problem. So we really need someone that's gonna go in there and ask those questions. Right now, I don't know how many of you follow the Reilroad Commission. I know it's a very exciting group to follow. They meet once a month. They will be meeting on Tuesday in Austin, and they have published their agenda. It's a 61-page agenda. You think, oh my goodness, that meeting is going to take forever. It'll be over in less than an hour. It's crazy, because they have already decided before they walk in the door that they are going to pass everything on the agenda. So they'll talk briefly about 4 items on the agenda, and then everything else they will say, okay, items 23 through 520. Any comments, questions? No, all those in favor? Aye, all those opposed? Move on. That is how the Reilroad Commission is regulating our state. It's horrible, it's ridiculous, and we really need someone that's gonna be in there and asking questions. I mean, to run the entire state's oil and gas industry on an hour a month? It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So one of my traits, if you will, is asking a lot of questions. I ask questions like they're going out of style. So that's really what we need, right? We need someone that's gonna go in and start asking these questions. I recognize I will be one of 3. The other 2 commissioners are Republicans. So I can't go in and, make all sorts of changes and do sorts of radical things. However, I can start asking questions. And that will allow the people of Texas more information, right? I mean, if I can get the meetings to 2 hours instead of 1 hour, right? Because I'll be asking questions about what is going on here, how is this affecting our communities, how is this affecting our workers, how is this affecting our environment? What is going on? Why are we just passing all of these things with no discussion? So that's when he talked about transparency at the Reilroad Commission. That's one of it. Right now they just run things through and you have no idea. So even if you did pay attention, you wouldn't know what was going on anyway, because they just ram it all through, and it's just items 23 through 30 or through 500. Great. So it takes hours and hours to have to go back and try to research what they're going to be talking about. I feel that we need to be more transparent. Let everyone in Texas know what's on the agenda and what that really means. Right now, the agenda just has like a case number and a half a sentence summary of what that is. That doesn't allow anybody to actually know what's happening. And like I said, the Railroad Commission is one of the most important agencies in this state, and this is potentially the most important environmental race in the country. In case you're not aware, the Railroad Commission is what OPEC was modeled after. Yeah, crazy, right? So that's where we're getting our roots, if you will, and how it affects the rest of the world. So we really need change at the Railroad Commission. We need to be able to work with our legislatures to change the name. I know. But we'll keep trying, and we'll keep pushing it, so that everybody knows what's going on. And we need to hold these companies that are making billions and billions of dollars every year, we need to hold them accountable for the damage that they're doing every day to our environment and our communities here in Texas. So Katherine Culbert for Railroad Commission. Thank you so much.
Do you think there should be more than 3 railroad commissioners for the state this big? Or do you think that's adequate?
I don't know that it's not adequate. I mean, we look at the other agencies across the state, right? And the Railroad Commission is the one that has 3, right? We look Land Commissioner, there's only 1. Ag Commissioner, there's only 1. So,
Okay.
Does it need to be expanded?
Would you have a big staff? How big is the staff to support those 3?
There are over 1,000 people working at the Railroad Commission. So, and that's still not enough, by the way. We don't have enough inspectors to go out and inspect all of the wells and the pipelines and everything else that's happening, and they also don't get paid very well.
When complaints come in, are they very responsive?
Okay, that was a nice softball. So, as an example, there was a well that blew out I guess it's been a couple months ago now. And so the landowner tried to call the emergency number, the Railroad Commission emergency number, and they couldn't get through. And then when they finally did get through, the first question is, well, is the media there? So yeah, so they're not there for the residents of Texas. They're there to protect
One more
themselves.
question. Has the media ever been out to Lake Beamer?
I know I've seen pictures in newspapers. I don't know if the media has. I mean, I know some of the folks that are working out there have been trying to get more exposure and get more people to take notice. I don't know. I don't think it's a regular stop on anyone's beat.
All right. Thank
So,
you.
yes.
I have one.
Absolutely.
I am concerned of pipelines that they've stopped using, but they still have oil and gas in them. Is there, or they got something in them that leaks. So I'm curious about the maps of the pipelines, used and unused, current pipelines.
So all of the pipelines should be, the mapping should be available on the Railroad Commission website. With all the pipelines that are, I don't know if they have abandoned pipelines, but all the current pipelines are on the GIS page on the website. As far as abandoned pipelines, if there's still stuff in it, that's a problem. Because if it's no longer in use, it should be blocked off and it should be filled with nitrogen.
Okay.
So if there's other things in pipelines that are leaking, then I would say call the Railroad Commission.
Wait 8 years for my answer.
I have one quick kind of related to Vicky's and Linda's question.
Yes.
Recently on NPR, Texas Standard, there was a series of on the problem of old wells that have been plugged and capped, and now those plugs and caps are starting to break down out in the Permian Basin in West Texas. And ugly, nasty stuff is starting to bubble up and cause a lot of problems. And as I recall, when they approached like Christy Craddock about it, she didn't want to hear about it. She didn't want to do anything about it. She didn't think the Railroad Commission had any business getting involved in that. And tell me if I'm right in what you think the right role of the commission would be there.
So this goes back to companies need to be responsible for their wells. The way well drilling works right now, a lot of the big companies will drill the wells because it's expensive to drill a well, right? So a big company will come in, they'll drill a well, they'll produce for a while, so they'll make lots of money off of it, right? They'll get barrels and barrels and barrels of oil or gas, and they'll make money off it. Great. And then the wells kind of decline. They don't produce forever, so they'll decline. And then at some point, right, the company will say, it's not really worth it to operate this well anymore. Let's sell it. Like it's still kind of producing, but it's maybe only producing, 30 barrels a month as opposed to, 30,000 barrels a day kind of thing. So let's sell it. And who's going to buy that? Is it going to be another big company? No, it's going to be a small company. It's going to be a mom and pop shop. It's going to be somebody that's just, looking to make a little money on the side kind of thing, just here and there. It's going to be somebody that doesn't have a whole lot of money. But at that point, the bond that was in place for the drilling now goes away. So now the new company owns this well, and there is no bond on the well anymore because they bought it. So now they are responsible for plugging it at that point. And a lot of these smaller companies just don't have the money. It's not cheap to plug a well. So that's one issue that we've got. So we've got a bunch of these orphan wells, as we call them, that are out there that are spewing methane, that are still producing oil, that are bringing all sorts of other things to the surface. And they're kind of wards of the state now because no one can afford to plug them. And then on the other side, when companies do plug them, the material approved for plugging right now is concrete. How many of you have walked down the sidewalk and seen concrete crumbling? Right? It is not a forever chemical. So a lot of these wells now that were plugged 20, 30, 40 years ago, even if they were plugged correctly, which many of them were, however, there are also some that were not plugged correctly, the concrete is starting to break up and to come loose, and now we've got wells that are reigniting themselves, right? And so we're calling those zombie wells, right? The wells that are coming back to life. And those wells, they're gonna produce things like brine, so very, very salty water that comes up. That water is going to have radioactive materials in it. That water is going to have things like toluene in it. It's going to have all sorts of crazy, nasty things. There's also going to be methane, right, which is another word for natural gas, which, as we all know, is a wonderful greenhouse gas that is warming our planet. It will also have oil. It will have a little bit of everything. And so now that's coming up to the surface. And no, Christy Craddock says, oh, well, it was already plugged. It's not our problem. And again, we need these companies that drill the well, right? So these big companies that make billions of dollars every year, which is ridiculous. We need them to be responsible for that well from the day they drill it until forever. And if they're not going to be, responsible in perpetuity, then they need to not be drilling the well.
Okay,
Just following up on that, you're presenting the problem, and it's clearly a problem, and you've got the information very knowledgeable. But are these the questions you ask when you go to the meeting? This is not a full stop. Where is it going now? What are you doing about it?
So, yeah, so the Railroad Commission is supposed to be doing something about it, and they're not. Right, so that's part of why I'm running, is because I feel that they need to be, and if we don't get new representation on the Railroad Commission, they're never gonna do anything about it. There are other organizations that are working on that and following up on that. One that I used to work for is called Commission Shift. And they're working to reform the Railroad Commission, and they're following up on, they're doing a lot of the studies that are also coming out that show where these issues are and how they need to be addressed. So, I mean, me as one person, I am not a multimillionaire, so I can't go and buy these wells and plug them myself. But we really need the Railroad Commission to step up, and we need help from the legislature. And right now, the legislature, won't even change the name of the Railroad Commission. So that's the support that we're getting right now in Greg Abbott's Texas.
I guess one other answer is there are investigative journalists who are following up on this story.
Absolutely.
We may kind of have to depend on our journalists to keep this issue alive and put pressure on people.
Yep, definitely. Okay, well, thank you so much.